we were started in late 19. So as a grassroots organization, we begin with the objective of creating a network of grassroots organizations working on the environment, and where we as Paryavaran Mitra aspire to increase public participation in environmental decision making process. I'll quickly introduce to you all our speaker for today's webinar, Tripti Ma'am. She is IPEN's South Asia Regional Coordinator, and she works at Toxics Link in New Delhi. She manages IPEN's prospects on women and chemicals, while also serving as the organization's gender coordinator. She holds a master's degree in environmental management and has spent last 8 years advocating for a safe and toxic-free future. She has worked on a variety of chemical and waste concerns affecting the environment and human health, including endocrine disrupting chemicals, POPs, lead, mercury, nonyl phenols, pharmaceuticals, antimicrobial resistance chemicals, and biomedical waste. She collaborates on projects relating to chemicals and health with a number of NGOs in India and other South Asian nations, as well as worldwide with IPEN and other affiliated NGOs. So I'll now over to you, Tripti ma'am. I'll just quickly share your presentation and then we can start.
Thank you so much, Priya. I would like to share my presentation myself so that
okay, sure.
So thank you for the welcome, Priya, and I'm glad to be here today talking about plastic waste and health impacts. So I will just go ahead and share my presentation. I hope you can see my slides.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. So good evening, everyone. I'm Tripti Arora. I'm the IPEN Gender Coordinator and the South Asia Regional Coordinator. I would like to start by introducing IPEN. So IPEN is basically International Pollutants Elimination Network. It is a global network working towards a healthier world where people and environment are no longer harmed by the production, use, and disposal of toxic chemicals. So we are basically working with over 600 public interest organizations in over 123 countries. We are working globally to strengthen the chemical frameworks, and we are working globally, nationally and locally, trying to bridge the gaps, generate information, and advocate for regulations. So the organization works through 8 hub organizations, and Toxics Link acts as the South Asia hub for IPEN. As the hub, we work in collaboration with over 65 POs, which are participating organizations in South Asian countries, and Paryavaran Mitra is also a part of us, and we have been working with them for a long time. And as I said, Toxics Link, we are also we work on the similar waste and chemical issues. We are based in New Delhi. We are a research and advocacy organization. We basically work on a lot of toxic chemical issues, which are POPs, endocrine disrupting chemicals, pharmaceutical waste, heavy metals, lead, mercury, other waste management issues, which includes plastic waste, biomedical waste, electronic waste. We work in collaboration with international networks, which includes IPEN, Zero Mercury Working Group, World Alliance for Mercury-Free Dentistry, Healthcare Without Harm, and many other groups. And we work at the national and the international policy levels, trying to fight for a toxic-free future for all of us. So when you see this image, the first thing that comes to our mind is the quantum of plastic waste. You know, whenever we talk about plastics, the first thing that pops up into our mind is an image like this. There is so much of plastic waste being dumped into the landfills, being dumped into the oceans, and it's everywhere. It's the amount is huge, and people are, just scavenging through it. Animals are eating it at times, and this is the image that comes to our mind. But this is just one side of the coin. So when we talk about plastic waste, quantum is one issue. The amount of plastic that we produce, how to dispose it off, how to manage it in a way that it's not, dumped everywhere. That is one part of the problem. Today we are also talking about other part of the problem, which is the chemical part of it. So it's not just the plastic production, it's the hazardous plastic production. So the way we are producing these plastics, it's actually quite hazardous because of the amount and the types of plastics that are used in producing different types of plastic. It is known to have crossed all the planetary boundaries at this point of time. It is impacting our ecosystem. It is altering habitats. It is altering natural processes. And our ecosystem has kind of lost the natural ability to adapt to climate change and other hazards, which is directly affecting millions of people's livelihood, food production, capabilities, and definitely social well-being. It is impacting our health. Many a times we ignore the fact that there are chemicals in plastics which are affecting, which are leading to increase in the number of cancers, increase in the number of, developmental delays, other reproductive, neurological, and so many other health problems that the humankind is facing today. It is impacting people. It is impacting the communities which are living around the dump sites, which are living around the production facilities, who are directly exposed to these chemicals which are being used or released due to plastic production. Did you know that over 13,000 chemicals have been identified which are used in plastics? And more than 3,200 of these chemicals are known to be substances of concern. Let me clarify here that this is something that we know. This is the data that I can say because this is something we know. There is a lot of data that we don't know of. There might be a number of chemicals that we are not aware of, or they have not been yet identified as concerning or as toxic. More than 6,000 chemicals in plastics have no safety data. So we don't know what we are using, how much we are using, what is the limit that it should be, used in, the quantity it should be used in. And only less than 10% of plastic waste is actually recycled. And I know many people actually think that recycling might be the solution or recycling is good, but it's not really good if it's not happening in a good way. So recycling process is actually toxic. It's toxic recycling because the way it is being recycled, the way the plastics are produced, they contain so many chemicals. And while they are recycled, the chemicals are also being recycled and they are going on and on around the chain. So plastics, as I said earlier, when we talk about plastics, quantum is not the only problem. After we use plastic and how to dispose it off, that is one part of the problem. But plastics are a threat throughout its life cycle. So the moment plastics are produced, they are problematic because first of all, they are made from carbon. They are basically fossil fuels. The way they are produced, they're produced from fossil fuels. And while they are produced, they're emitting a lot of chemicals into the environment, into the air, into the water, and into other environmental matrices. And there are basically no chemicals without plastics. There are no plastics without chemicals, I'm sorry. So there are no plastics without chemicals. All the plastics that are produced has some or the other chemicals into it. They are additives. They are added to increase or give certain property to the chemical. I mean, if you go out there, you will see that they are hard plastics, they're soft plastic, they're all the kinds of plastic. They are produced because of the chemicals that are added into them to give it a certain, to give it the desired property. And once they are produced, now if you look at this cycle, once the chemicals are produced, they are releasing a certain amount of chemical. Then once they are used, they are further releasing chemicals. Let me give you an example. The baby feeding bottles that we use, the plastic bottles, a few years ago at least, they were containing a chemical known as bisphenol A, which is an endocrine disrupting chemical. So while it is there in your baby feeding bottle. When you pour milk into it, hot milk, or when you boil it, the chemical is leaching out. It is coming into your food, it is going into your baby's body, and it is certainly causing a lot of toxic impacts. So while you are using the plastic, it is releasing chemicals. Then while you are recycling it, I am aware that one of the participants asked a question about recycling. So I will just spend 1 more minute here to explain about recycling. So whenever I'll start by giving an example. So for example, you threw your plastic bottle or plastic can of oil or whatever you use in your household. There's a plastic container that you threw out. Now that plastic container will be picked up by the waste pickers, and let's say it is going to a formal recycling center. Now, when it goes to the recycling center, it is melted and it is converted into small pellets, small plastic pellets, which can be purchased by anyone and can be used to purchase anything. So, for example, you threw a plastic container which had oil in it, or you threw a plastic toy which had certain chemical in it. Now it is melted, it is converted into a pellet. Now that pellet will be used to create any plastic product, which could be a pencil box, which could be a toy, which could be a food container, which could be anything. And that plastic which was there in the original container that you threw out would also have been recycled. So while recycling also, the chemicals that were in there in the original product would recycle. Now, if they are not recycled, or even after they are recycled, they might be going to a plastic fuel center. So some of the facilities burn plastic in order to create fuels, for example, in cement kilns, or there could be other sort of facilities where it is co-incinerated. And it is known that when plastic is burned, it releases toxic fumes or toxic chemicals, which are known as dioxins or furans. They are highly toxic, they're cancerous, and they are known to be major air pollutants. And certainly that is why we say that plastic should not be burnt. So, but unfortunately they are. So when they go to a plastic fuel center, so if they are disposed of by burning, they are releasing chemicals. If they are going to the landfill, certainly the picture that you just saw, it is contributing to that whole quantum of plastic waste, and the chemicals are leaching, they're converting into microplastics, nanoplastics, and the chemicals are leaching into the soil and into the water. And in the landfill, there will be a cocktail of chemicals, because there will be all sorts of products that go into the landfill. There's unsegregated waste. There are so many different products that are there, and there would be a cocktail of different chemicals. Or sometimes from the landfill, or directly, it is entering a global waste trade chain. So you might be aware that especially the developed part of the world tries to dump their plastic waste into the developing countries, and it comes into huge ships. And it is recently I heard that plastic waste was coming into India from Canada, and there are similar stories that we hear that plastic waste is hidden in different containers, and it is coming to developing part, where again the chain goes on. It either goes to the recycling center, or it is burnt, or it is going to the landfill. Eventually, throughout its life cycle, it is affecting the population, it is affecting human life, it is affecting our entire ecosystem. So I would move to try to understand what are some of the chemicals that are known in that are used in plastics. So some of them are persistent organic pollutants. Some of them are endocrine disrupting chemicals. The example that I just gave, BPA, which is bisphenol A. There could be perfluoroalkyl substances, which is also known as PFAS. There could be BFRs. There would be phthalates. So there are a whole lot of chemicals that are used in plastics. And all of them have huge health impacts. Some of them could be cancers, reproductive disorders, immune system disorders, neurological problems. EDCs are especially being endocrine disrupting chemicals. They're especially known to decrease fertility in both men and women. They are known to impair the intellectual functions and cause developmental delays, especially in children. And a whole lot of other serious health conditions are known to be caused by endocrine disrupting chemicals and other chemicals which are used in plastics. Now, I'm also going to talk about chemicals and women or gender. So, but first let's discuss why do we need to talk about it? Why are we just not focusing on chemicals and waste or plastic, but we are also trying to talk about gender or women? Why? Because in our society, or biologically also, men and women have different biology, have different physiology, they have different gender roles, they have different social determinants. They are they have different exposure rules, and it is known that women are more susceptible to chemicals. They are the most vulnerable. By what do I mean by that? So first of all, uh, when we talk about biology, so women are basically have more fatty tissue, for example. So the biologically they will be storing more of the chemical. So when a man and a woman is exposed to a same chemical, the women's body will be storing that chemical more in comparison to a man's body. And most importantly, these chemicals are being passed on from women to her children during pregnancy or lactation. So it has a sort of transgenerational effect, all the chemicals. There is a gender differentiated exposure. Now, when I talk about gender, that means what the male and the female, recognize, they associate with. So they have their different factors that contribute to the extent of exposure. So for example, the type of occupation and work tasks. So in generally in our societies, there are set gender roles. There are set roles that man is supposed to do this or women is supposed to do this. So depending on the type of occupation they are in or type of task they are performing, they are differentially exposed. Their level of education and literacy also matters, especially when you talk about the agricultural field. Women are mostly, they are also farmers, but they are mostly washing the clothes which are used by the men. Men are responsible for spraying the pesticides, and sometimes they are not able to read what is written on the containers. Then use of personal care products and use of cleaning products at home. So generally women are more, um, it's more of a women's job in many of the societies, unfortunately, and they are responsible for using cleaning products at home, or they are using more personal care products and makeup, and thus are exposed to a lot of chemicals. So the exposure is different between men and women, and then are the and thus are the impacts. So as I said, the women and men are, the bodies are different, the exposures are different, and their biology are different. So they are differentially exposed and differentially impacted. Now, why are we here talking about gender and chemicals? Just a few points: that there have been studies which have shown that women which are exposed to chemicals such as POPs or EDCs, these chemicals are being transferred from a mother's body to their child, and they have been known to cause irregularities in a woman's body. There are n number of chemicals which are used in products. They are used in, I mean, sometimes even I am scared when I read about all of this, but it's unfortunately the hard reality of today, that whatever product we use, be it a personal care product, be it a cleaning product, clothes or toys or furniture or kitchen utensils, we are exposed to a number of chemicals in our everyday lives. And this is just the household things that I'm talking about. When you go out, occupational exposure is certainly different. People working in the electronic industries or textile industry or any other healthcare sector, they are exposed to different number of chemicals which are there. These chemicals includes BPA, phthalates, PFAS, triclosan, nonylphenol. These are all some of the known chemicals. I've written down these names because these are the chemicals that we mostly hear about, that some of them are regulated. There is some sort of data to understand that they are toxic, or they are used in so many products, including plastics, and they do have a lot of serious health implications. So let's talk about differentiated exposure. So I would just like to quickly give an example of how women are more exposed or differentially exposed to exposed than men. So just one example is that when we talk about textile industry, so it is known that women are more in proportion than men working in the industry, and certainly they are more in number. For example, 45 to 68%, women are the ones who are exposed to those chemicals in a higher proportion than men. And then there are differentiated impacts. These chemicals have been found in blood, in amniotic fluid, in breast milk, in umbilical cord, in addition to general body fluid. So these chemicals there have been a lot of research conducted, and they have found these chemicals in body fluids. They have been found in pregnant women, they have been found in breast milk, they have been known to cause a lot of multiple reproductive, neurological, and other disorders. And they have differentiated impacts. So when I talk about women, I don't mean to say that men are not impacted. Certainly men are also impacted, and the point I'm trying to make is that differentiated impacts. So men's body is different than a women's body, so both of them are impacted differently, and obviously the environmental, the social determinants play a huge role in the amount of exposure and in the quantum of impacts that there are. So men also have vulnerabilities, and over the years, because of the high exposures, we have seen an increase in the incidence of testicular cancer and other reproductive disorders in men. Now let's move back to the particular chemicals which are used in plastics. So as I initially talked about BPA and baby feeding bottles, you can see that these are just some of the examples that I've tried to put here to understand a range of products and a range of chemicals that are used. So you can see that baby feeding bottles and even other plastic bottles contain BPA or BPS or benzophenols. There are diapers and sanitary napkins that Toxic Link, we have tested ourselves, and they have found that they contain phthalates and volatile organic compounds. And similar for baby feeding bottles, Toxic Links and IPEN have been working for years trying to understand the concentration of BPA in those bottles, and sadly we have found a huge concentration. And a good news is that we have been able to bring a regulation. So today in the market, when you see that there are bottles which are labeled BPA free, baby feeding bottles, it is because there is a standard by the Bureau of Indian Standards specifying that there should not be any BPA in baby feeding bottles. But there are countries which don't have these standards, and there are other products which still contain BPA, like other bottles which we use to drink water. There are electronics which use flame retardants. There are textiles. There are food contact material. If you see the plastic packaging containers that we see, the plastic cling wrap, that is in today's world, it is very common. You find vegetables wrapped in it at the supermarket. So those wraps and those plastic material contains BPA, nonylphenol, PFOS. Toys, sadly, this is a very big concern, because plastic toys that we trust our children with, we give those plastic toys to our children, even very small children, and they contain these toxic chemicals, BPA, phthalates, short chlorinated paraffins, lead, heavy metal, and so many other chemicals are there in these toys, which are certainly hampering with the child's neurological and developmental ability. There are dioxins, as I talked about earlier, which are specially released due to burning of plastics. There are UV stabilizers, which is UV 328, which is used in plastic, building material, automotive parts, and many other products. As I said, these are endocrine disrupting chemicals. I'm trying to focus on these chemicals to help to increase an understanding on the capabilities of these chemicals to hamper with our body. So endocrine disrupting chemicals are basically capable of mimicking, blocking, and interfering with hormones in our body's endocrine system. So when endocrine disrupting chemicals enter your body, it acts like an hormone. It mimics an existing hormone in your body, and thus causing hormonal imbalance, thus causing reproductive problems, altering the sperm quality, altering fertility, and many other problems. And as I said, they are widely used in many of the consumer products that we use. They have been known to cause health implications, especially in women and children, because as I said earlier, women have different biology, they have different physiology, they are more vulnerable during certain stages of their life, they are more exposed, and thus they are more impacted. However, SciChem has identified EDC as an emerging policy issue. SciChem is strategic approach to international chemicals management, and it is a global framework which tries to regulate chemicals uh, across the world, and it has identified EDC as an emerging policy issue, and it tries to regulate all the chemicals that are EDCs under its framework. There are different sources of exposure to EDC. It can come through oral consumption of contaminated food or water. Sorry. We can come in contact with it through our skin or inhalation. It can be applied to our skin when we use personal care products. It can, by contaminated water could be contaminated, or the food could be contaminated because of the plastic product containing that chemical which we used for the food or water. It can be transferred from a mother to the baby through placenta or through the milk. So just to understand the impact, the sources of exposure to women, so there can be these many different exposure routes. So it is not just through household products or through makeup or through pesticides. It could be all of this, and plastic is one of them. So plastic industries, the people who are who are employees who are working in the plastic production facilities, the people who are using plastic products, the people who are living near the dump sites, or especially the waste pickers who are scavenging through the waste and are getting exposed to the chemicals that are used in those plastics and are being leached to it throughout the life cycle of that product. So you can see here, this is just a figure to show you how the how the chemicals, especially endocrine disrupting chemicals, impact men, women, and children. And you can see that it has some similar and some different impacts. So this is just, again, the similar thing, trying to emphasize on the fact that women are more affected because of these chemicals, especially the endocrine disrupting chemicals. These are some of the stories, or I would say the research studies which throw light on how these chemicals have been found in women's body and have caused cancers, breast cancer, and other sort of issues, health problems in women and even in men. What are we doing about it? Now that we have understood that all those chemicals are present in plastics, they are being released throughout the life cycle, they are impacting everyone, but certainly women are more vulnerable, and there is a need to look at the issue through a gender lens. There is a need to understand the differences and try to come up with something that addresses these differences. So the world decided to come up with a global plastic treaty. So in March 2002, United Nations General Assembly approved a broad mandate to start talks on an international treaty to address the growing threats from plastic pollution. It will be a key legally binding agreement moving the world towards a toxic-free future. Till now, the discussion is ongoing through international negotiating committees. 3 of those meetings have already took place, and IPEN and Toxics Link are key players, and even Paryavaran Mitra. We all are trying to participate in the conference, trying to advocate for a treaty which also addresses plastics from a point of chemicals in plastic, which considers plastic throughout throughout its life cycle and addresses all those concerns, and also looks at the issue through a gender lens and create a inclusive and a gender responsive framework. So these are some of the suggested actions that we as public health groups, we have been advocating for. So first is understanding plastics as carbon and chemicals. So looking beyond that, plastic is just a quantum issue. Plastic is just a waste issue. Plastic is much, much more than waste issue. And that can only be done when we understand what is plastic made of. So it is basically carbon and chemicals. Toxic chemicals make plastic incompatible with the circular economy. The thought that recycling plastic will solve our problem is wrong. We need to understand that because of the composition of plastics, because of the fact that they contain such huge variations, such huge quantums and different types of chemicals, it cannot be recycled because it is recycling the chemicals as well. And we need to address the harmful health impacts from chemicals in plastics. And the treaty should also protect health and environment. So it should consider both the aspects in place. It should talk about removing toxic impacts at all stage of the life cycle of plastic. We need to also look at the production part of the plastic issue, not just the disposal. And we need to end the production and use of toxic chemicals in plastic. The only way to deal with this is stopping the usage of toxic chemicals in plastic products, which can solve the problem by also making it recyclable. And lastly, incorporate a gender lens, understanding that the chemicals that are used in plastics have different impacts on different genders, men, women, and others. And we need to look at the issue through the lens, trying to understand the differentiated exposures and the differentiated impacts. Our goal is finally to frame a plastic treaty that bans recycling of plastic contains hazardous chemicals. So how can this be done? This can only be done by first understanding the composition. So there need to be some sort of clarity in what kind of chemicals are used in the plastics. Only then they can or cannot be recycled. Then protecting the public's right to know about chemicals in plastics and information on plastic product and waste exports. So we, as of now, we generally, whenever we buy a plastic product, there is no indication of what sort of chemicals are used in that product. So there should be more, we should exercise our right to know, and there should be clarity, transparency on the types of chemicals that are used in our products. Charges plastic producers to finance the treaty. So it's a polluter pay principle, basically. So the industries which are putting those chemicals in, they should be, paying for the treaty. And it should curb toxic and climate pollutants. Lastly, I would like to say the importance of gender in whole of this issue. So as you know that our sustainable developmental goals, one of the sustainable developmental goals is gender equality. And it is, although it is a separate goal, yet it is incorporated in all of our sustainable developmental goals. And if we want to look at a future which is sustainable, if we want to achieve our sustainable developmental goals, gender equality is one of the important SDG that we need to achieve. Women are the key agents of change. I want to leave you with this thought that right now we still have less power of decision making throughout the world. There are still inequalities that exist at our household levels, at our working place, and at the societal levels. And this needs to change. This needs to change. We need to give more power. We need to give equal rights to women and let them lead the way. Although they are still leading the way through engagement at all levels, we see women in those global forums fighting for a sustainable future. But yet there's a lot to be done, and women do understand these issues better, since they are getting affected more, since their children are at risk. And giving them the power to make these decisions, to have a role in policy framework, increases our chances of a better policy protecting human health and environment. I will end the presentation with that. These are some of the resources to find out all the information that I just talked about, and many, many more reports. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you so much, Tripti ma'am, for explaining such a complex topic with such clarity. And I hope other participants feel the same way. Although I'll just quickly share some of the questions that I received through our registration form. And there are few questions in our chat box as well. I'll just uh, quickly read them and you can answer if you want. In UNEA, who is going to represent India? MOEF or any Indian citizen? And
Yes.
yeah.
No, I'll take that one first. So now there's INC going on, which is International Negotiating Committee. So obviously the government representatives are also going. They are the main participants in the treaty. And Indian citizen, we go as NGOs. I mean, you have to register as an NGO also. So we go as observers, like Mahesh ji has been going. Uh, so yeah, so the government will also be going, and NGOs will also be going to play their role.
There's another question in the chat box. Globally, a lot is being done with the treaties and all. But how will this be a reality? How will the production of plastic bottles and plastic products completely end?
So I hope they do end, but it's a very difficult thing to achieve. But see, we don't know about ending, but at least we are right now trying to regulate it, trying to at least the global framework actually helps in creating a system. So when there is a commitment at the global level, so when the countries go to such a platform and commit that this is what they will be doing, it certainly leads to more capacity building. It leads to more resources in terms of doing it at the ground level. So once a treaty is formed, once the countries commit, they come back to their levels and try to create bans, try to create pressure, and look for alternatives. So yes, we are trying to stop the toxic production of plastic at least, and certainly this treaty will help, because the treaty will help instruments, the treaty will help frame policies, help give you ways to do this, and this will have industries also in the forum. So industries will be forced to come up with alternatives to produce different products and to not use toxic chemicals in um, in their products. And this certainly depends on the text of the treaty. This is what the countries are doing right now. They're participating in the INC, fighting for a text which says that this is the best way to do this, so that the issues are addressed and then it is taken up by the countries.
Thank you. There are few questions from our registration form, and I'll just quickly read them, and you can take up anyone you like. The first question that we got is, what is the best way to control the plastic pollution, because our environment is still polluted? The You take up, or I keep reading the question?
I'll go one by one. The best, so there is no one way. So as I said, that plastic is a problem throughout its life cycle. So there are different things that different stakeholders can do. So the industries can have ways to manage their own plastic waste. The industries should have ways to take back plastic, to collect the plastic back, to recycle it in a proper way. And as consumers, we can reduce our dependency on plastics. We can try to use alternatives when we can. We say that India has banned single-use plastics, but I don't see that. I still see people using single-use plastics, and it's a mindset change. So right now I'm sitting in one of the cleanest cities in India. I'm sitting in Indore at this point, and I see no waste. I see no waste being dumped here and there in the city. I see that people are not throwing the waste in the bins, because it's a mindset change. So that mindset change needs to come. So as consumers, the best thing that we can do is, ask questions, stop using plastics, ask our friends to not use plastics, to teach our children to, reduce our dependency as much as we can. I mean, in it's not possible to completely give away, because there are products that we need, especially in the healthcare sector, because I see a question below about the healthcare sector also. So the healthcare sector plastic, it's saving our lives. So right now we can't like not use it, but a polythene bag we can do away with. We don't need to use that bag. And there are a lot of they are used for like a minute and they are thrown and the quantum is so high, so that is one part of the problem that we can avoid by reducing our dependency on plastic.
Thank you, ma'am. There is a second question. How to reduce and prevent plastic usage in society? I think you just answered that. So I'll move on to the other question. How microplastic affects the fish skin? What changes we can see?
Okay, so that's a very scientific question. Maybe a researcher can answer that better. But all I can say is that microplastics are very tiny, and I don't know about skin right now, but they are in the guts, they are in the intestine, they are in the body, and they are certainly causing a lot of damage in terms of blockage, in terms of mimicking hormones and other diseases, because they are also loaded with chemicals. Although they are plastic, but they have become microplastic from initial plastic probably, and might have broken down and created microplastics which contain chemicals also. So the load of that microplastic is too high in aquatic animals, including fishes, and causing many, we have seen studies where it is impacting especially the hormonal system, the fertility of the aquatic animals, and are causing multiple diseases.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. How to communicate to medical doctors to tell patients not to use plastic things?
So I don't know why doctors, need to tell you. I'm sorry, did I not get the question? How to communicate to medical doctors to tell
I think
patients?
it's kind of an awareness question, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but about the medical, the healthcare sector uses a lot of plastic products which are necessary, and sometimes they are life-saving, and certainly more research is needed to kind of create products wherever plastic can be avoided. But at the moment, I think it's a difficult call to take because of the usage and of the importance of those products that we use.
So the next question is, how can we reduce the impacts of plastic toxins at household level?
Okay, that can be done by reducing your dependency on products. So a lot of the cleaning agents that we use right now, they were originally industrial cleaning agents. They were meant for industrial usage. For example, the phenyl, for example, some people use for cleaning the floors, or sprays, disinfectants, many other things. They were industrial agents initially. So they have high potency, they are toxic. And we can manage our homes without them, because we are not an industry, we don't have that amount of infections in our homes. So we can easily use household products. I know many organizations are creating also homemade products, because sometimes buying organic or homemade products can be more costly for common people like us. So you can just switch to simple homemade products, baking soda, lemon, some sort of other things in your as cleaning agents, and also also as cleaning agents, and for your personal usage also. A lot of personal care products, your cosmetics, your hand washes, and all those things have a whole lot of chemicals, and they come in plastic bottles. So maybe you can try to buy certain products which come in glass packaging, or which come in, there are alternatives available. So you can try and look. You have to be conscious in making the decisions. I think the first step is understanding. First step is consciousness, that we don't want to buy plastic, or we don't want to buy chemicals. So understanding that these are the chemicals that are there in these products. So you can read the labels, you can try and understand, okay, if this chemical is there in my product, I should not be buying this, or I should try to buy something which does not use plastic, or I should, if a possible, I can create my own product for myself at home, or I can do away with this particular cleaning agent or personal care product.
So moving on to the next question, gender specific impacts on women during life cycle of plastics from production to disposal. I think we covered that in the presentation. There is another question in the chat box. Is it possible in India to stop or ban plastic manufacturing? Now, biodegradable plastic-like materials are being invented. What are India approach towards it?
Okay, so it's a difficult question because banning plastic manufacturing would take a lot more of commitment from the industries and from the government, and it may happen in the future, but as of today I don't think it's happening right now or in next few years. But certainly we can try to regulate plastic, like India is taking good steps in trying to ban at least single use plastic. So that is one of the steps that can be taken, that we try to at least stop producing unnecessary plastic, that alternatives are easily available for. That can be first step. So biodegradable plastics are there, certainly they are there, but we need to create some sort of a measure to identify their level of biodegradability, because I'm not sure there are a lot of products which just say that they're biodegradable, but many times they are not. So I think the government should come up with some sort of a mechanism to regulate these products so that the claims that are there of biodegradability are true. But there are products that are biodegradable. In a country like India, there are a lot of traditional methods that are still used. There are still a lot of traditional products that are um, that people use instead of plastic. In many rural parts of the country, they're still being used. So I think we can learn from that, and we can try to create market for uh, create market for products which are not plastics. And I see that is happening. I see initiatives by the government, by the civil society, by the consumers, and I think we need more support towards them to have more and more products available in the market. Priya, you're on mute.
Thank you, ma'am. I hope we have answered the, all the questions from the participants. Now I'll just take a minute to quickly start the quiz. And everyone can take participation in that, please. Okay, I hope everyone gave their answers. I'll just end the poll now. Thank you, Tripti ma'am, for today's presentation. And I hope all the participants are being satisfied with the shared content. Uh, do write us if you have any queries, any further queries regarding this webinar. And thank you, everyone. Now I'll just end up the webinar. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you for having me.